Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Beyond 9 to 5 Transformation in the Workplace. My name is Noah Eisenberg. I am a global black belt for modern work here at Microsoft. I support several regions across the business, and I've spent the last 15 years of my life exploring how tinkering with technology helps us create more mindful experiences in the workplace. I'm joined today by my peer and colleague, Gary Wade. Gary, did you want to introduce yourself, your role at Microsoft, and kind of tell us a little bit about your career journey as well?
Yes, thank you so much, Noah. Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Wade. I'm an employee experience specialist in the South OU. I like to say my job is to connect your human capital or people strategy to one of the products that sit in our Viva suite of applications. I've been in Microsoft for almost 3 years now, and prior to that, I spent most of my career in the military and in government, where I was a human resources officer, field artillery officer, and then running my own HR organization inside of federal government. And I just so happened to have taught a little bit in Georgetown's Human Resources Master's Degree program as an adjunct lecturer. So happy to be a part of this conversation today, and definitely happy to talk all things employee engagement and productivity.
Thanks, Gary. It's amazing. Our backgrounds are so different. I started my career at Microsoft in 1998, and I was here for almost 10 years. And then I boomeranged out. I went and I worked in the HR tech and startup and AI world for about 13 years. And I came back 3 years ago to help forward this whole vision that Microsoft have of how do we take this platform, this employee experience platform that we have, and translate it into this new formula of employee engagement, right? And that's kind of like the buzzword, employee engagement and productivity and employee experience, kind of like the way CRM was, 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
But the reality is that our customers are in the position right now where they have to find this new formula, right? And part of that is at the corporate level, and part of that is enabling agency at the employee level. And that's kind of what brought us here to inspiring Beyond 9 to 5, because our customers came to us and said, God, we don't know where to start. Right? It's
Yeah.
this chicken and the egg, we don't know where to start. And you wrote this great article that talks about the chicken and the egg, engagement, productivity, like which one do we pick? And I'd love to kick off this series of podcasts kind of talking about that. So can you tell me a little bit about kind of what inspired you to write that article, Gary?
Yeah, definitely. It all started because organizations don't know where to start. You hear so much about employee engagement and productivity as if they are mutually exclusive or they don't feed onto each other. And I think it's a combination of the two. And I always will believe that it's those engaged employees, those employees who are happy at work, are fed into the mission of the organization, give additional hours in their intellectual prowess to everything that's going into the organization. Those are the type of employees we want, and those employees ultimately produce a certain level of behavior. That's the productivity side of it. Because they're engaged, because they're more likely to be involved inside the organization, they do more for the organization. They produce the results for the organization, and so everybody wants those productive employees. But those productive employees, they are generally engaged. And so, how do you get those engaged employees to be productive and those productive employees to be engaged? How do you start? That's the disconnect. That's the concern that a lot of organizations are trying to figure out. What's the balance? What's the right balance? And where do we begin?
Right, because those are typically our best employees,
Absolutely.
right? Those
Absolutely.
engaged employees that truly care about the business will go the extra mile, right? They'll forget to take their breaks. They'll be on the edge of burnout, right? And
Yes.
and we know that once those patterns start to show up, our employees are at risk, right? So we'll talk about that in detail as we kind of navigate through how you need to view that new performance equation that you have the opportunity to create as your organizations are evolving out of transformation, post-COVID. So why do you think, what is preventing our customers, right, from getting to that transformation space? What is it about the chicken and the egg that is creating that blocker?
Yeah. I think you said at the very beginning is where do they start? if it's a chicken and egg paradox that I like to say is, then where do you start? Do you start with productivity, or do you start with employee engagement? And I think the pendulum has been swinging back and forth between the two since COVID, right? Since COVID, we started to just, people are working at home, and they need a sense of well-being, and sense of mental relaxation, and a space for a stress-free environment, and that worked well. But then as soon as COVID went away, we kind of went back to business as usual, and the idea of productivity and ensuring you're getting the best out of your employees and hitting your bottom line became front and center. And it's been a constant wrestle between the two. Is it a focus on well-being, or is it a focus on productivity, or is it a bit of both? And I think because of those two dilemmas, and essentially this paradox that we keep talking about, is organizations just don't know where to start. Do I focus on employee productivity and risk well-being and burnout, or do I focus on well-being and burnout and risk employees not being as productive because they're so relaxed?
Right.
And I think it's a different space, because it doesn't belong to just one part of the business. It's a
That's right.
responsibility for everybody. It's not just the CHRO's responsibility, or the CIO who bring in the technology. It's everybody, because employee engagement should matter to everybody, because I would argue that every single leader in every part of the business inside an organization, they want engaged employees who are productive. So where do you start? I think that's the challenge. A
Right.
lot of people just don't know where to start, and so because of it, they're kind of frozen.
Yeah, and I think that frozen state, like, how many false starts did we have during COVID?
Yes,
No
absolutely.
wonder we're frozen.
It's a bit of both. What I shared in the article is, if you only had to choose one, where would you go? And the article kind of leads to, well, find the best talent. That's kind of the starting place. And I agree wholeheartedly with that. But you just can't leave it alone to just finding the talent. You still have to give that person, or those persons, the tools that they need in order for them to be successful. It's a symbiotic relationship. Great
Right.
talent and a great culture ultimately leads to high performing
And we
organizations.
need to think short term, long term, right? It's like we don't want to choose. We want to look at our talent. We want to look at our people, and we want to understand, where is the friction, right, in their engagement, right? Because odds are that friction is what's affecting their productivity. And every persona is trying to bring different results into the business,
Yeah.
right? So having that command and control approach to running a business doesn't allow for ideas to iterate from the inside,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the thing that you should resonate with me the most, and again I touched on the article, is you will always transfer short-term gains for long-term gains when you focus in on productivity. So you can give the person all the tools and all the things that they need to be successful, give them a whole bunch of tasks and things that they need to accomplish, and they will be productive, right? They have the desire to do so, but at some point that employee will be burnt out. Yeah, I use the
Yeah,
analogy, the same horse, a different rider. So you get someone going, and you can
I
get them
like
going,
that.
and put them on the back, and you keep whipping them, and yeah, they'll still produce, but at some point that person will be burnt out. And so again, having to understand the type of environment that you're going to put that employee and all the resources you're going to give them. Yes, they will be successful, but at some point that level of well-being needs to also come through. Yeah.
Why don't you walk us through this?
I love this equation, because for me it kind of goes back to a lot of the things that I've learned in my own career. I'm a student of social organizational psychology, and this idea that our behavior is a function of who we are and the environment that you put us in. I think it speaks well to what you see here as it relates to this equation, right? The performance, right, which is what we want out of our employees, and really what we want out of organizations to be a high performing organization. It's a function of the engaged talent, right? So that engagement side of the equation, I believe, belongs to the talent that we bring into our organization. They're energized, they're empowered, they're invested in what we're trying to do, from a organizational goal and mission perspective. And this productivity is really how we get stuff done. And you get stuff done by having the resources and tools, and the environment that allows that energized, empowered, and invested employees to be their best self. And then if you wrap all of those things with a bit of AI, now you can not only get this level of activity from employees, but they can have their own digital assistants that also helps them really understand how to be productive along the way, because they have the tools necessary for them to get this. So this equation is really at the center of this paradox. Do we
And
focus on
AI is the
engagement,
force multiplier,
right? Do we
right?
focus on either one? No, we focus on both, and we allow AI to help as a force multiplier, as you just said, for both engagement and productivity.
Yeah. 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 It's really interesting that this has created the new resiliency, right?
Yes.
I talk a lot with my customers, with our customers, about where does AI remove the friction that interferes with the flow of work for your organizations. You're the only ones who know that,
Yeah.
right? Innovation and new experiences with innovation allow you to rebuild the formula to enable that transformation, right? We talk about the importance of the three-legged stool
Mhm.
in addressing the chicken and the egg. You have to have HR, you have to have the business leads, and you have to have IT enabling the transformation,
Absolutely.
right? And we're seeing such a significant move to that need to become that highly performant organization, which we're going to talk about in the next podcast. But it is that sustained resiliency that is critical. AI shows up, removes the friction that interferes with my day, with your day, allows me to optimize my time at work, and it allows me to flow because my day is not 9 to 5. There's days
No.
I start at 7 and I finish at 4. There's days I take a break because I have to do this or I have to do that, but I'm finishing my work. And if the AI can create interventions that remove the friction, that allow me to do a better job, then that's actually saving my job and
Yeah.
not taking it away from me. And
Right.
that's, I think, the biggest realization that we've had as to where the AI is going to create those psychological interventions for us in our culture. How did we get here? Well, if your organizations looked anything like Microsoft, we started here, right? COVID ripped through our cultures like a knife, and it exposed the processes, the tools, and the areas in our ecosystem that were fractured, that were disconnected. It showed us where decades of our technical debt existed. And it showed us that as much as we wanted to give our organization autonomy, the complexity of the architectures were really driving up our costs. Our agility was limited, and our administrative burden was on the rise, which of course added to our compliance risk in total. Furthermore, not only did it affect HR's customers, which is the different areas of the business, right? Our HR serves us, it serves the different business units at Microsoft. We also saw that it had a diametric effect on how our customers were engaging with us. And I would urge you to think about how your ecosystem looked and what you realized about your ecosystem during and before and after and all through COVID, and the opportunity that you now have to have a jumping off point into something new. So what's really interesting is what we've learned from our Work Trend Index study. The Work Trend Index is conducted across 31,000 subjects. We've been doing it since 2021. Across 31 countries, different roles, different personas, different perspectives on modern work and what it is to go through the flow of work and experience work. And this is research that's pulled together from 365, Speeds and Feeds within our telemetry of our 365 and Teams, Outlook Exchange, SharePoint products, LinkedIn tools, and Glinton People Science and academic research. And here's what we learned. 2021 came in with a bang, and we were not ready for this great disruption of hybrid work. We thought we were, but we weren't. In fact, the research shows us that in 2021, shortly after the pandemic started, more than half of us, 53%, said that they would prioritize their well-being over work. But we were spending 252% more time in Teams. How does that equate? How does those scales, they don't level out. So that's where we first started to see some of the fractures in our culture. Good good indications of where we were challenged. Additionally, we saw that generational equity really wasn't there. Gen Z and millennials, there was a 3% increase in how they were shifting or considering changing work. So it's no surprise that we ended up with this new equation in 2022, where employees were able to legitimately tell their employers, that they didn't have to actually be in the office to make the company hit their number, to help the company hit their number. And that put managers and leaders in a very different position with employees, because employees said, you got to justify it for us to come into the office. We're not just going to show up because you told us to come in. You got to make it worth it for us to come in. And by the way, just because we're flexible doesn't mean you can call us at all hours of the night. We're not going to, back to the research from 2021, we're prioritizing our well-being and considering that two very impactful generations are making moves across companies. That's a pretty powerful ask. And then additionally, the water cooler conversations are gone. I mean, they're not there really. And in 2022, they certainly weren't there. So how do we share knowledge? How do we democratize information in this hybrid world of work? Because building that social capital and sharing that social capital, that Facebook, socially, LinkedIn experience within your organization is very different in a hybrid world. How does leadership show up to inspire and influence if we're not meeting in person? So very interesting realizations. And then in 2023, the biggest thing since the iPhone showed up, and that's this tiny little thing called AI. And when AI showed up, so did we. And we really started to think about, how does AI solve for us? What does it really mean? Is it going to fix it? Is it going to take our jobs away? What's it going to do? And here's what we realized. We realized that AI is like our kryptonite for that mundane work, right? It is the thing that is going to remove the friction from our jobs. And you don't need to look any farther than the top 5 things that we saw people identified as the obstacles to their productivity that they thought AI could make better, right? We have inefficient meetings, things that cannibalize our time, too many people in meetings, unnecessary meetings, inefficient meetings, no actions. We can't do things within our meeting environment, no clear goals about what we're trying to achieve or where we're going. Having too many meetings, double booked, triple booked, the wrong people in meetings, not knowing what we're forwarding, feeling uninspired. I equate that to losing my creativity. Feeling uninspired means different things to different people, but for me, those mundane tasks hinder my creativity as a GBB, so that leaves me feeling very uninspired. You want to make me unhappy? Give me a list of to-dos to do, and I will be very uninspired. So how do we make those to-do become more a part of the flow of work? So we're coming into meetings and we're flowing and we're giving actions, and at the end of the day, we're finishing our work. And most interestingly, and this is one of my favorite realizations, is that I'm not finding the information I need. And I call those information-seeking behaviors that are unproductive for us when you look at them over a span of time. So how do we create better information-seeking behaviors to solve for that obstacle? Now, in 2024, we had the realization that not only is AI here, see, in 2023, we questioned, is it going to make an impact? Is it not going to make an impact? But in 2024, we realized, oh yeah, it's making an impact. And the impact that it's making is fast and furious. 3 out of 4 people are using AI. People are bringing their own AI. They want it that badly. It's very reminiscent of that iPhone moment when people were bringing their iPhones to work. So now it's no longer bring your own device. Now it's bring your own AI. And we talk about that in this latest publication. But more interestingly enough, 46% of them, nearly half, have been using this technology for less than 6 months, and they're reporting dramatic shifts in where it is actually helping them solve for work. And they also report that they're regularly experimenting with how different prompts can actually help them become more efficient. So how they're asking the AI questions so that they can actually build a model that serves them back. Now, remember what I told you about those two generations kind of having that different level of empowerment, and we needed some of that talent equalization across our generations? Well, this is fascinating when you think about that. Gen Z, millennials, boomers, and Gen X don't agree on many things, but they certainly agree on the power of what AI is going to do in their flow of work. That very last point is that the research also shows that people who use AI have a greater propensity to propel their careers forward than those that choose not to. And the reason for that is because by removing the mundane work and removing the remedial tasks and being able to focus on your goals, you have a higher likelihood of exceeding the objectives that you've set. It's a fascinating study. I urge you to take a look at it. Let's talk about agency, the importance of organizations giving their employees agency. Why is that important?
Well, when we come to work, I firmly believe that the vast majority of employees come to work to do well. They want to grow. They want to continue to thrive in their environment. And part of that is having a say in organizational culture, having a say on how the tools and the environment is going to help them thrive. And by giving employees agency, by listening to them, by hearing what their wants, needs, and concerns are, and actually addressing them, now they have a say in how the culture is built. They have a say in the technologies that you're bringing to the table, and they ultimately have a say in terms of how to create the environment that's going to allow them to be their best selves at work. And so agency and organizational culture isn't about a top-down approach. It's about a bottom-up approach in terms of what is the culture, what is the environment that we need in order to be successful. It's a give and take between the organization and the employer. And so agency, again, allows employees to have a further say in terms of how the environment is shaped, because ultimately we want employees to work and employees want to work. And I think the data shows that.
And that's how we measure the smile
Yes.
on our
The return
employees'
on
faces.
experience, that's what they
That's the
say.
return on
Yeah,
experience, right?
absolutely.
Is
Yep.
when we give them that agency, then we can use technology, organizational insights about our people, surveys, right? Transformative innovation moments to create those intersection points, which allow our employees to thrive, right? Harvard
Absolutely.
research talks a lot about creating thriving employees. It's literally putting smiles on the faces of your people. And our research shows us that when we do that, that's how we can create that sustained performance. So Gary,
Absolutely.
what a pleasure it was to spend time with you today. Thank you for bringing
Thank
your
you.
knowledge, both militarily and organizationally. It's been a real delight, and I welcome everybody to join us in our next podcast, where Gary and Kelly are going to be talking about what it means to be a high performance organization. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Have a great
Thank you.
day, everyone.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.